You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we will be reviewing the action. And there was a lot of action from the third ODI between India and England, the final match of England's tour of India, and a game which went down to the wire. India, of course, managed to snatch it in the final over, but from the whole tour, that might have been best till last, boys. I'm Jack Hope, and to go over it all, as ever, I'm joined by Ross Legg. How are you doing, Ross Legg?
I'm well, thanks, mate. I'm actually a little bit sad the tour's over. I think we've seen some great cricket across the tour, and I thought this was a fitting end to what was a really enjoyable spectacle.
We've seen some great listener stats as well, haven't we? Which is what you're really talking about there, I know. And a very dark Max Rowe Brown in his new house. How are you doing, Max Rowe Brown, in your new house?
Hi, Jack. Yeah, very well, thank you. Also disappointed the tour's over, but it's been a good festival of cricket for everyone. So on to plenty more cricket this year.
Before we get into the cricket, Ross, do you have any messages for our listeners?
Yep, I think, Jack, your point around listenership is definitely one. And I think covering this tour has been great fun because we've had even better listenership than we usually have from all over the world. So
and interaction as well.
Indeed. So thank you ever so much for coming back time and time again to listen what we have to say about cricket and find out what Max's house looks like. I think that's a great thing to do. And to all our Hindi listeners, we wish you a very happy Holi, which is the festival of colours that you may have heard of. But the most important thing for the podcast is to like and subscribe this video and to follow us on all podcast platforms and social media platforms at the Cricket Pod. As always, leave some comments, get into an argument with Jack. He loves it. He lives for it.
Keyboard warrior.
Make sure you click that bell thing. We don't know what it does, but everyone else says to click it, so click that bell. The big news going forward is that we will be covering the IPL in depth. You don't have to worry about that, just like we did last year. We did 2 shows a week last year, and we'll be doing that as a minimum this year. To build up to it, though, we have 8 preview shows, 1 for each team, starting the 31st of March. And we're planning on doing, and I've emphasised planning here, on doing a live stream on the 8th of April, the day before the IPL, where we'll do a Q&A, make our predictions, and some other fun and games. But that's next week's stuff. We've got to finish off this tour. We've got to finish off talking about like a fantastic cricket match with over 600 runs. With were there 20 wickets in the end, or just 19 wickets?
I think 19 wickets.
19 wickets.
Yeah.
India couldn't bowl out India. India couldn't bowl out England. That's the headline. Max, can you recap how India failed to bowl out England?
I can indeed. So, as you said, India and England met in the final match of the ODI series to decide the eventual winners in a sweltering Pune. England won their 10th toss in 12. So, can you imagine how bad this tour would have been if that was the other way around? And again, we put India into bat. This time, however, in contrast to the last 2 games, India actually scored some runs in the power play and got off to a pretty quick start. England's spinners fought back, taking some big wickets, but Pant and Pandya then clicked into gear, and it looked at one point like India were on course for about 400. But with them both out in quick succession, India ended up stuttering to 329 all out, and a very similar score to the previous 2 games, despite a very different approach. England's reply never really got going after 2 early wickets from the excellent, once again, Bhuveneshwar Kumar. Every time England looked like they'd just built up enough momentum to get back into the game, a good bit of bowling, or quite often a rank full toss, snagged a crucial wicket, and England fell comfortably short to ensure a clean sweep of defeats, is what I wrote at 30 overs. And at that point, you may have been forgiven for turning off and assuming that's what happened. But no, we didn't account for Sam Makes Things Happen Curran, who scored a brilliant 90-odd, fell just short at the end of both a century and taking the win home for England. And also, we should give a mention to some superlative fielding from both Natarajan and Hardik Pandya, who had clearly, I don't know what they were doing, just been handling motor oil for about 5 overs before the ball came to them or something. They did their best to give England every chance to win it, but ultimately the two who did drop Curran and Wood multiple times at the end came back to bowl 2 very crucial overs at the end and ensure India did eventually see it out.
Yeah, and it was an absolute thriller. Chronologically speaking, I think the best place to start with all of this is India's power play, because as you said, Max, they came out firing in a way that they hadn't for the previous 2 ODIs. And I thought they were seriously impressive. So Shikhar Dhawan, that's his second best power play of the last 3 years. Pretty good going. India attacked about a third of their balls. So they, in other words, they tried to hit 33% of the deliveries they faced, 4, 4 or 6, more than any other power play this series. And they had England rattled early, didn't they, Ross?
Yeah, I think what we need to do, we need to take a step back and think of what we said on our show on Friday. When this is the bit where I think Ravi Shastri and Chris Silverwood are both listening to the podcast, because if you think about it, we said that India needed to change their approach to the power play. Big tick in the box. England needed to change their approach to death bowling. Big tick in the box. Kuldeep Yadav shouldn't be playing for India. Tick in the box. And Tom Curran shouldn't be playing for England. Tick in the box. So I just wanted to put that out there, that even when we may annoy a couple of people within England winning, we're still right sometimes. But I do agree with you, Jack. I think it was a breath of fresh air for them. I think they hit 16 boundaries between them before succumbing to Adil Rashid. But it enabled India. We put them on that platform that we'd not seen. Like typically they get to kind of that 30 over mark and they're kind of between that 100 and 150, then start to press on. This just kind of shaped the games a little bit differently. And I thought it was really great to see.
Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, if you think about it logically, and we talked about this on the last game, when we were doing the recap of the last game, if you are 200 for 4 at the end of 30 overs, you might not want to be 4 wickets down, and that might mean that you don't have a great last 20, but you still have those 200 runs. And so if you do have a great last 20, despite being more wickets down than you want to be, then you can get like an unbelievable score that you can really go ballistic. And when Pant was batting, who incidentally scored his highest ODI score of his career so far, I'm sure we'll see some bigger ones. Yeah. But that was his highest ODI score. When Pant and Hardik were batting together, 400 looked just as likely as not 400, didn't it? But then you enter England spinners, and I thought they were over the sort of 23 or 4 overs that they bowled as a trio. Obviously, Moeen and Adil Rashid taking on the most of the donkey work there. I thought they were good, weren't they, Max?
Absolutely, yeah. They've really actually, as a partnership, turned out to be 2 of England's most key players in the ODI side, and we saw that again today with how they managed to change the momentum of the game. And I think it was also highlighted maybe how India may have made a mistake in dropping Kuldeep was obviously one thing that we suggested was the right thing to do, but bringing in another seamer in his place was perhaps misguided, given that sort of change of pace show in England's innings really did kind of put the brakes on for India, and in comparison, Indian batsmen who are probably better players of spin than the English batsmen, you think maybe a sort of a similar approach for India might have resulted in a slightly less close game towards the end. But as it was, England's spinners showed their value. And Liam Livingstone only bowled 3 overs, didn't he? But he looked handy, given that he basically bowled leg spin or off spin depending on the handedness of the batsman, which I really liked. There's a spinning it both ways, and you can go with Adil Rashid's or Kuldeep Yadav's options of bowling googlies to the batsman that you don't really want to be bowling to, but Liam Livingstone just bowls off spin or leg spin. Well,
it's like that kid at school, isn't he? That's just good at all sports. Like literally, just in PE, just turns out to be like, how's this guy who's really good at basketball, also amazing at javelin? How's that happened?
Long levers.
I think that's clever though. That's matchups, isn't it? If you've got a left-handed batter, off spin's a great option. Leg spin's terrible. If you've got a right-handed batter, leg spin's a great option. Off spin's pretty terrible.
I think what we
Before
do
we,
need to say
before we
on
talk about anything else,
Oh.
let's do Liam Livingstone and KL Rahul Ross. I think you were about to talk about that, so the
No,
floor is yours.
No, I was actually I was about to say that there needs to be a bit of credit that goes to India. I think here they have showed a willingness in the white ball, especially the white ball bit.
We'll give them credit in a minute. Talk about the bad wicket.
Liam Livingstone has bowled like a leg side half, like full toss that it should go out the ground, and for some reason KL Rahul just I don't know what the shot is. It's like one-handed off his body, like almost scared of the ball, and then Liam Livingstone is laughing when he's released it, and Moeen Ali has somehow taken a blinder. It was a brilliant catch from Moeen Ali, and it was one of those bits where every single cricketer who was watching it just like, I can't believe what I've just seen.
Every single cricketer's also been there, though, haven't they? All batsmen have got out doing that. All bowlers have taken a wicket like that. It's wonderful to see. It's why we love cricket.
Yeah, Liam Livingstone's been working with Don Bess in the nets.
It was honestly the worst wicket of the whole England winter, and I'm thinking that Don Bess one where the half tracker that Dick Weller hit to point.
Yeah,
that was the king of bad wickets, but not anymore. KL Rahul, King Legend Rahul. That's why we call you King Legend Rahul. Right, Ross. Credit to India because they did get 329. That is a pretty good score. Might have been, we thought, halfway slightly below par, and that might actually be true, but. 329 is still over 6 and over. That's good batting.
Yeah, it is really good batting. And I think that what I was going to say is the credit is due where they've shown that adaptability. So there's one thing around changing your approach and being able to do it, but there's the competency and the capability of actually adapting and delivering on it. And that's what I thought the change up in the power play was actually really good to see. What I think is a little bit worrying for India is the legend that is Virat Kohli. It's and I was pretty impressed with him.
Well, we've got some positive things to say about India. Here's how bad Virat Kohli is.
I just is Virat Kohli? Is it something to worry about that he's now not hit a century for 491 days? So that's for question one. And secondly, is it fair to say that Virat Kohli is Moeen Ali's bunny, following it the 9th time in international cricket he's got him out?
Well, Moeen Ali hadn't actually taken an ODI wicket since February 2020. So the fact that his only wicket in 13 months was Kohli would suggest that you are correct, that Virat Kohli doesn't know how to play Moeen Ali. On the century thing, on a more serious note, we talked about this a lot on the last show. There's nothing really to worry about in terms of Kohli not getting a century. Like there's the big pandemic gap in everyone's cricket calendar.
Yeah.
The pitches that the Test series were played on, they weren't century pitches. If we're being honest, and whilst these ODI games have been played on century pitches, there are only 3 opportunities, and England aren't mugs. We'll be over 500 days. It will be over 500 days, though.
Also, 100 is just such an arbitrary number anyway, isn't it? So.
Dan Weston's not joined us, has he? Anyway, let's talk about the middle overs for India. So, joking aside on Kohli, Pant and Pandya combined a partnership for over 100 runs, and they look great. We talked about the engine room kind of not firing for either side as much as it could have over the entire tour. Here, I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and it's kind of, you saw the best of Rishabh Pant, the best of Pandya. I think the commentary they kept on talking about how Rishabh Pant is a free spirit. He's such a free spirit. He's just a really talented cricketer. There is just a bit around him that he just makes things far more entertaining. Did you see the shot of the day, which he almost like contorted like a snake almost and whipped it off his hips? Like he was like a shape of an S. It was unbelievable.
It was good. Yeah. I'm getting a bit bored of it, to be honest.
Well, how good Pant is.
Yeah, well, yeah, just like all the weird stuff. I wish he'd just, play some proper cricket shots. No, he's good, isn't he? Let's be honest.
Well, next time India play Australia, we'll get not bored of it again.
No, I've enjoyed Pant. You can't not. It's so innovative. He's so in control of everything that's going on.
And he's always
so
just
explosive.
He's always got a massive grin on his face. That's the other thing about it. Like, you can tell that he's really enjoys playing, and that's such a nice thing to see. Some other players on both sides, very, very intense. and very angry when things aren't going right. But Pant's just giggling the entire time. I think that's a brilliant way to approach international professional sport. Just laugh at everything.
And he does. What else is there to recap? Because I mean, at the death, I suppose we need to talk about England's fight back, because it looked like a 400 deck. India were batting like a team that were going to get 400. England were doing that thing. Chris Nash, when he came on our show after the 5th T20, do you remember, Ross? He talked a lot about bowling into the swing. And basically, for people who didn't listen to that, it's when a bowler bowls at the stumps or above the stumps. So, in other words, the easiest bit for a batter to just sort of swing through the line and hit runs. I think England were a little bit guilty of doing that to Pant and Pandya. I don't think, as they have shown over this tour, I don't think they're particularly adaptable on really good wickets with the ball. I don't think they start thinking to themselves, how do we go about not being hit for 4 or 6? They continue to bowl at the stumps looking for wickets, which is brave, and it's aggressive cricket and stuff. But, on a pitch like that, I don't know if it was the best tactic for that particular spell of the game. Once they broke that partnership and towards the end, I think, go back to that. But I thought they could have hidden the ball a bit better, don't you think, Ross?
Yeah, I think what was really interesting around, so Josh Buttler was kind of captaining today, and it was kind of interesting how many bowlers he actually used. So they used 7 different bowlers in this space, and I'm not sure it's just because Mark Wood had the Jonathan Trotts, but I think there was a real case there
what was happening?
I think that's what was pretty insinuated, that he, Mark Wood wasn't very well. He lost a lot of liquid in one form or the other, and did well to bowl 7 overs and take 3 wickets, to be perfectly honest.
And bat for a while as well.
Indeed. He'll definitely sleep well tonight. But I think there is that bit where England had to do something a little bit different. But it is really difficult, right? We can sit there and say that, actually England didn't do too well. When Hardik Pandya is going at 145 at the strike rate, it's difficult to bowl to. But I do think England do need to shift that approach just in their strategy. It was nice to see someone like Liam Livingstone give it a couple of overs. Reece Topley, I thought, did well again. But it's still not good enough for England, I think, in the bowling department, and there's definitely room for improvement.
Last person we should talk about in the first innings of the match, I think, is Shardul Thakur, who picked up 30 pretty quick runs, which looks super valuable. Looking back on this match, he obviously went on to take a load of wickets. I honestly cannot believe this, that Shardul Thakur is probably the white ball star of both sides. I mean, Bhuveneshwar, Kumar's got a shout. Bairstow had some good innings. But I think over the 5 T20s and the 3 ODIs, Shardul Thakur's performance,
His lordship is what I'd say. Lord Shardul.
He's been pretty good.
He's been described as a golden arm today, and I said it to you both before we got together for this. Step aside Sam Curran. We have a new man to crown makes things happen, and it's Shardul Thakur.
He's a difference maker.
He did make a lot of things happen today, and he has done for the last 2 weeks. So
yeah, he has, and he was like, I didn't rate him before these matches. I still don't think he's. I don't think you can.
He just said he's player of the white ball series. I still don't think he's very good, though.
Well, no, but this is the thing, isn't it? In cricket, there are fine margins between taking 14 wickets and taking 8. In white ball cricket, in particular, I don't know if we'll see Shardul Thakur doing this in the long term. But over those 8 matches, he's made some memories for himself there, hasn't he?
I think he looks like he could be a really useful player to have in that team as a sort of a third, fourth seamer and someone who can score a few runs at the end of the innings. It's a sort of middle overs as well. He bowls the middle overs really well. Sort of a Liam Plunkett style that we had for England at the World Cup. It's sort of that kind of role, which is a really important role to fill, and not everyone can do that in those middle overs. So I think there are really promising signs there that he could actually turn out to be a really, really useful player. And you don't have to be like a superstar. Liam Plunkett's been in and out of the side for England in those previous few years, and we're looking at who can probably do that for England now. India look like they've got that role potentially, not sewn up, but certainly got a good candidate for it for the next few years.
I tell you who doesn't look like he's going to become a good lower order batsman, and that's Krishna. It's always good to see a genuine number 11 bat, isn't it? Especially against someone who's pretty
10.
rapid. He tried to play a forward defensive from square leg. I'm no cricketing expert, but I tell you what, it's not going to go very well.
That was a man who was scared of the ball.
It was, yeah.
All right. Let's switch innings then. India posted 329. At the halfway stage, I thought that was about 10 to 20 runs too few. I didn't think it was a 400 wicket. I thought India could have got there. I thought somewhere around 350 was par. I don't know about you boys.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think 400. It's a wicket where 400 would have been chaseable, but 1 in 10 kind of thing. Like 400 doesn't come along that often. For it to happen twice in any game is bizarre. But it was a good pitch, and I think certainly, especially given England's performance in the previous game, 329 looked a little light to me, but.
I just like the fact now that we are talking about this is like a 400 pitch. That to me is the shift in mentality that you've seen. And both of these sides had their B plus teams out. They didn't even have their A teams out, which kind of says how good both of these sides were.
Yeah, but I think that we'll talk about that in a second. But I think certainly in India's case, that only really applies to their bowling. Let's talk about England's batting. It started really well for Jason Roy.
4 or 5 balls.
He was doing that thing like the only really good players can do, where they sort of put the bat there, and then the ball goes away really fast. And you're, as someone who studied some physics, you're sitting there and you're thinking that, like the Newton's laws of force don't make sense.
Yeah.
In terms of what I've just seen there. And then he was out.
I'm putting that one. I mean, it was a brilliant delivery from Kumar, but I'm going to put that wicket down to M. Atherton for what he said after Jason Roy's first shot, which was, that's a really good sign for Jason Roy, because he only plays that shot when he's in really good form, because of the way his bat swing closes the face. So for him to open the face like that first ball is a really good sign. I mean, at that point, you're like, well, he's gone this over, isn't he? That is nailed on. Jason Roy out.
I've always taken you as a bit of a superstitious man, Max. So it doesn't surprise. The commentator's curse is.
The commentator's curse is a well-known phenomenon, Ross. I'm sure you're aware of that.
It didn't get much better for England. What did they end the power play at? I can't remember off the top of my head, but they were
65 for 2.
So they were, and that actually, you know what, the power play is kind of it's a microcosm of the whole innings, isn't it? They were always up near what they needed to score, but they just could not keep wickets in hand. Ross, if you were going to dig into that and explain why England kept losing wickets, who are you blaming? Let's apportion some blame.
Well, I think there's always a bit when you look at this from an English perspective, you can sit and go, Bairstow could have batted like a normal batsman. Roy may have not missed a straight one, but at the same time, there is a bit where you have to really respect some of the bowling and some of the plans that were going on. I talked earlier about how they adapted, and what I really liked was when Roy got out. That was a demonstration of Bhuvi backing his skill set and backing him bowling line and length, and took a good wicket. The Bairstow dismissal was almost a reaction to what was happening with Stokes in the previous one. So they clearly thought about something, and they adapted by bringing Pant up to the stumps. And actually, it pushed Stokes back. Pant was then like, actually, I'm going to do this for Bairstow as well. And it just disrupted their rhythm at the top. And I thought it was a really, really interesting thing to see. And Bairstow, was trapped LBW. Stokes... it was almost, that was the plan to them, and I thought that was really, really interesting. So I'm not sure there's blame to be. It's more credit to the Indian approach on that one.
I think that's fair enough. Bairstow on first viewing, it didn't look out, but then on second viewing, it looked pretty out, didn't it? He shuffled way across, and I think Ross, you've isolated the kind of root cause of that in a way, and that was Rishabh Pant changing up what he'd done in the first 2 ODIs for the third, which is really impressive. Like, that's impressive learning that you have, someone, whether that's Kohli or Pant himself or Bhuveneshwar Kumar or the Indian analysts or Ravi Shastri, someone has had a look at how England's top order bat and has thought, our pacers aren't as they're not express. We could get our wicketkeeper to stand up to them here, and it will limit their ball striking options. And you see Bairstow bowled a fair amount, but you don't see him tucked up LBW too often like he was, like pinned on the crease. Basically, he's usually got decent foot movement. It's like his head falling over and there being a bit of a gate that is the problem for him. But yeah, so it was interesting to see him get out that way.
It's something that England have done a lot to those kinds of bowlers, those sort of the medium fast bowlers. And I'm actually surprised it doesn't happen more often. I really like to see it, and it does. You do require a really good wicketkeeper to pull it off because it's not easy. But definitely, I'm just agreeing with you both, aren't I? So there's not much to add. But it's something that England have done a lot, and I think we'll see it more.
Yeah, we definitely will now. I think. Let's talk Ben Stokes. Because he had a funky innings, didn't he? How many times do you reckon he could have been out to make 35 today?
It was a charmed innings, I think. Is how it goes. He was really lucky in the ODI on Friday with the not out, run out, or whatever it was. But it was the comical drop. So Pandya, the drop from him was astonishing. But for someone who's he's regarded as a pretty high class fielder. And that was that the worst one of the day? I'm not sure. There's plenty to kind of go through.
Let's go through because a lot of them happened near the end. Let's isolate the Stokes one. Mm-hmm. Stokes, so he was nearly run out twice, I think, and not like nearly run out. Like that would
good
been
2
close.
yards.
Like you're not even in the frame running.
KL Rahul missed a shot at the stumps from about that far as well.
Yeah, and then that drop from Hardik Pandya. Max, did he just take his eye off the ball, or was he worried that he might run into his brother? Like what happened there?
I can only assume that he saw something in his periphery that put him off, because it looked, I mean, he was, he got round really easily. He was there, his hands were underneath of it, and then it just fell out. It was an aberration, I think. One of those just weird things that happens. At least that's what it looked like for the day.
what I thought from the whole of Stokes' innings was it was very amateur cricket vibe. That's what it
didn't time anything, did he?
Yeah, the bowling around him, the fielding around him, his shots and just his approach. It was very much a Sunday cricket amateur-friendly innings. And like his dismissal from the full toss.
It was full Sunday cricket, wasn't it?
He literally couldn't hit it like more in the centre of mass. If he was a sniper, it'd be absolutely over the moon at how he got that straight to Shikhar Dhawan.
Yeah. So he went, that was 68 for 3 after 10 overs. Butler was out not too long after. England were 95 for 4. And then they were 155 for 5. And that was kind of the progression of the innings. Every time they got something together, someone would throw it away. Just on Butler was out, I think, the same way in all 3 innings in this ODI.
Yeah, well,
he's been struggling for runs in white ball cricket for a little while. Have we turned Josh Butler? Have we done a reverse Bairstow on Butler? So Bairstow, obviously, he went from like a kind of above average, but not amazing test batter to an amazing white ball player. Have we turned an amazing white ball player into like a slightly above average test batter with Josh Butler, or is this like Kohli style noise? Like just no, shit happens. Ross.
Well, I think Stuart Broad hit the nail on the head of all people on commentary, where he talked about how just the rhythm of the game is a little bit different. So like he's adapted his game to the mentality of Test cricket. He's obviously a supreme 2020 player, and actually the lack of game time of ODIs over since the World Cup final for him is actually probably the reason for it. I don't think England have anything to be worried about, and you're not going to drop Josh Butler from your ODI team. So I think it's just one of those things where who really cares?
Fair enough. Max, do you care?
No, not really. He'll be fine. Josh Butler, legend.
Cool. So England stumbled along. Probably the one partnership worth talking about, I think, in all of this before we get to the denouement, which is what everyone's here for. But we'll talk about other shit for 20 minutes because that's what we do.
We're in charge.
Yeah, Liam Livingstone and David Malan, the 2 newish boys into the England ODI side. Were you impressed with how their innings went, their partnership, Max?
I was, yeah. David Malan, I think, will be disappointed because he did really well to get to that 50, and it looked like he was the one you were expecting him to take that lead and take England deep into the game with the way he plays of building his innings in a fairly measured way and then going for it at the end. It looked set up perfectly for that kind of innings from Milan. So it was a little disappointing to see him fall at the end of the first phase of that. And I think, given all the noise around Milan and what he adds to the team and is he too slow, all that kind of thing, I think it was a similar case to when you were saying in the Test series that, like, for Ben Foakes to stay in the side, he needs to score like 2 match-winning centuries. I think it was similar for Milan today. I think for him to like be able to make his case that he should be playing ODIs for England, he unfairly would have had to score like a match-winning 120 or something. So I think he'll probably feel a little disappointed that he didn't kick on, even though he did play quite well. And Liam Livingstone, I think, looks right at home in that England side. I mean, he should have probably, again, another man who will be looking back disappointed that he made a start and didn't kick on. But he's come in, due to injury and maybe expected to get a bit of a game, but probably didn't expect to come straight in. And he's done really well. He's looked like he's looked the part. He's looked like he's got the ability to play at this level, and he's looked at the start of his innings got real intent, I think, which is obviously something perhaps from being around the England setup for a while without having actually played, something that's been ingrained into him, and obviously something that Morgan will be happy to see, and he could be a useful squad player for England going forward.
Right then, we get to the last quarter of the match at this point. So David Milan is out in the 26th over. England are 168 for 6. It's basically game over. Yet they go into the last over needing 14 to win. Ross, how did that happen, and why did that happen?
So because England had started, as you said, when we looked at the power play, they'd always just about kept up with the rate. They never really got so far behind until kind of the last few overs. And I think there was a real bit where England didn't do it completely cocked it up in the first ODI when everyone was just like ones and twos, take it deep, etc. And actually they had to do that in this situation. The risk and reward of that approach, that they had to see this through and had to take it as deep as possible. I think where the credit needs to go is some of Kohli's captaincy. I thought actually he captained really well in some of this. Shardul Thakur was brilliant. He came on at certain different bits. He moved his bowlers around, had some good field placements to put England into this situation. But then the England mentality kind of kicked in. So Moeen Ali kept the dream alive, and he almost started it. He almost made sure that England fans started to believe that we could do it. And the Indian fans, regardless of what they'll say with the confidence of victory, there was definitely a bit of the fear factor that started to seep in, and you could tell it on the field, right? There was the atmosphere changed, everything slowed down, and all of a sudden, Sam Curran was on 30. Moeen Ali had gotten out. We're just like, what's going to happen here? Sam Curran decides to turn into a really senior batsman. I was really impressed with that. And Max, not really a surprise from a Surrey point of view.
No, not at all. He's a golden boy, isn't he? He's great. I actually was surprised to see how mature he was in that innings, because Sam Curran, we've seen him put in some match winning or certainly important innings in the lower order in sort of his first real series, wasn't it, against India a few years ago, and sort of actually becoming a really useful batsman down the order. But it's only ever been 40s, 50s, 60s here or there, and today he showed actually that it looks like he's really grown up as a cricketer and batted really sensibly with Mark Wood. You can argue that maybe he should have taken some singles here and there, but I think he'd made the right call in making sure that he was, he tried his best to make sure he was on strike at the first ball of every over. He, and Mark Wood did a very good job of rotating the strike as well, which really helped him out. But I was really impressed with the way Sam Curran handled the pressure as well. And it was a case of, it was maybe it was Dhoni's tutelage at CSK that had really helped him take it deep. It was sort of that mentality, wasn't it? It was if I bat until the end of the game, there's every chance that we could win.
It must have been that. It must have been Dhoni, I think. Don't you, Ross?
Mahindra Singh. You just can't get away from his influence, right? I think what was Max, I completely agree with that. And I thought what was funny that you'll have some England fans who are sitting there going, "Oh, he should have not turned down some of those singles. We would have been maybe chasing 10 off the last over, etc." But kind of it is difficult batting with the tail. That is a bit that you're not only trying to hit runs and figure that out, it is also really difficult to kind of put yourself in those positions, I think.
Because they do mad shit. They're not very good. The reason they bat at 10 and 11 is they're not very good. Reece Topley, for instance, he has like 370 professional wickets and 150 professional runs.
I saw someone tweet saying he's a number 12. He's not even a number 11.
He's so
and he
bad.
did his
So
job perfectly, didn't he? Came in for one ball and got a single.
But you can't necessarily rely on these. So I mean, in that whole, maybe Curran should have run. Maybe India should have caught the ball.
Yeah.
They did catch one, to be fair. The one off Rashid, Virat Kohli, like
that was
what a
amazing
grab
catch,
that was.
That was brilliant. Like,
but now actually looks really important in the context of the game, doesn't it?
mm-hmm.
Yeah. There were 2 or 3 absolutely stinking pieces of fielding, though.
So you mentioned Pandya. So Pandya, they showed that replay 5 or 6 times. Like there was no, like not just after the catch was made. They even showed it like every couple of overs and be like, "Oh, by the way, Hardik Pandya dropped Sam Curran when he was on 21. Let's have another look at it." And it was playing on the big screen in the stadium. Hardik must be like, "Oh my god, what is happening?" To me?
I absolutely loved Hardik's reaction to Darwan taking the catch off Stokes. Did you see that? Sort of basically got down on his knees and prayed to him. That was excellent.
So to wrap up, though, I mean, like basically, Curran couldn't quite do it. I think you have to probably say that India's death bowling, when it got down to the last 3 overs, was a little bit too good.
Again,
Bhuvi, for example, is a cut above, isn't he? In terms, probably in both of those sides.
But actually, I think that we should probably give some credit to Pandya and Natarajan as well, because those 2 drops at the end were horrible. And it would be really easy for you to disintegrate mentally, then having to bowl overs 49 and 50, chasing a very gettable target. And they stuck to their plans really well. And Natarajan in particular nailed the full ball for the first 3 balls of that final over, and ensured that it basically became impossible. So a good mental fortitude from both of them there to come back and keep it tight.
Right, we've got about 5-10 minutes left before we want to wrap this up. The last question I'll ask on today's game was, what's the main reason that England didn't chase down what we thought was chaseable, Max?
It's a weird one, because I think it was just that regular wickets, wasn't it? It just kept losing momentum every time it looked like we were going to get there. Something happened. Sometimes it was a really good bit of bowling. Sometimes it was, you wouldn't say a freak, but perhaps it's one of those bad balls gets wickets scenarios. And that was just the nature of the game when you're chasing. Even though targets like 330 are commonplace these days, there's still 330 runs that you have to get, and the time is limited to do it. So all it takes is a couple of wickets, and that becomes very, very difficult. And I think that's what we saw today in those middle overs, where England needed to kick on. They just something happened to pull them back every time at those key moments. Yeah,
Ross, have you got any thoughts?
No, I think it was just, again, I was impressed by India's kind of approach to bowling medium pace, and I just thought that Max, you talked about kind of Natarajan there. He still went over 7 and over, but actually to hold your nerve in that kind of situation is a huge part. But Bhuvi's impact on that game should not go unnoticed at all. Like, he took 3 key wickets. He went at 4.2 and over. That is a huge contribution of 10 overs in the game. And Jack, what you kind of say is a cut above today. Like, he was that difference maker, and the fact that England couldn't have the blistering power play that could have possibly been there, that Jason Roy was in the mood for, as Atherton said, was a huge impact. So I think that's where the game was won or lost.
Yeah, I think probably what we got a glimpse at as well, as Australia saw and as England saw in the tests, was that England's B players are nowhere near as good as India's B players. So if you look at today's game, the guys in that England batting lineup who would play if it was the strongest 11 they contributed 60 or 70 runs between them. So I'm thinking Roy, Bairstow, Stokes, Butler. And I just don't think that, Milan and Livingston match up that well with Root and Morgan. Whereas I think India can change things around a little bit. I mean, like, is Bumrah a better bowler than Natarajan and Shardul Thakur? Yeah, he is. But I don't think that fall off in talent is as extreme in the India side.
I do think India missed some pace today, though. I think it's with those last overs with Sam Curran batting. He has, we've seen him struggle in the IPL against quicker bowling to get it away. So I do think with a little bit more pace in the side, India might have been able to wrap that up a bit sooner.
Sure, but what I'm not really saying here, though, that. So I don't think it's necessarily that if Bumrah was here, the game's completely different. I think it may even have taken a similar course. What I would specifically isolate from an England chasing perspective is that Joe Root is a much better number 3 than Stokes. Stokes is a much better number 4 than David Milan. And Owen Morgan is a much better number 5/6 than Livingston. And if you have that lineup, it also allows Butler to be your floater player, if you like, so you can bring him in and out as and when you need him. He doesn't have to be fixed at number 5 or whatever.
Yeah, I suppose the thing is you touched on it at the start, that the players that England are missing is the batsmen, and the players that India are missing are the bowlers. And I think actually from India's point of view, their backup batsmen probably aren't close to their A-team batsmen as well. And it's sort of the case that the backup bowlers are closer, and that's perhaps where...
That could be true, I think.
Don't you dare down talk Sky. Don't you dare.
We saw some new players, and we want to just quickly wrap up the whole tour. So we'll do that. Then we're on to Twitter. So Test matches, T20s, and ODIs. Ross, how do you rate England's performance across those 3 formats? Just in brief.
I think we did really well to win one of the Test matches. I think some of our performance was an absolute aberration in some of our aspects. So I think we kind of disgraced ourselves a little bit. And regardless of what people will talk about the pitch, etc., there should have just been some better application. I think in the T20s, or just the white ball in general, you saw how close kind of these 2 teams are. I think in Indian conditions, they know it just a little bit better. They're geared up to play it a little bit better than England. But I think from Morgan's point of view, he would have probably learned quite a bit, or at least unearthed some of the questions that he needs to fulfill over the English summer. So from that point of view, I think England can walk away with their head probably held high, actually, in terms of some of their performances in the white ball stuff.
And Max, from the Indian perspective, do you think that they'll be happy with the fact that they've won all 3 of the series, or do you think they'll maybe have wanted a bit more?
I think they'll be happy that they won those 3 series. I think there was a lot of talk about whether England being the best one-day side in the world, England, whether people, really talking up their T20 side. And I think India put down that marker to say, no, hang on a minute, especially in our own conditions, we can beat these lot, and they'll take a lot of confidence from that going into the World Cup later in the year. And as far as the tests, it'll probably hurt that they lost that first test, but because you could see that hurt with how the 3 following games went, and the intensity they played with, and also the preparation for those 3 games. So that will be a blot on the copybook for them. But I think it would be difficult to expect to roll over a side with England's talent completely. So I think overall they can be very, very happy with how it's gone.
Right, and then in a word, we're just going to run through the guys we saw in the ODIs for like the first or second time. So not necessarily new players, but guys who are in their first 5 or 6 one-dayers in total. So you got one word: Krunal Pandya Ross.
All right.
Max?
Yeah, that.
You can have some more words if you've got a really good point to make.
I think he's a poor bowler.
Okay.
I just think he's a very clever bowler, but actually quite poor.
Yeah, fair enough. I'd probably agree with Max on that one. Prasith Krishna Ross.
There's some real potential there.
Max?
Yeah, I think he bowled at a decent pace, so there's certainly promise.
Yeah, I thought he was the most impressive of the newer Indian players. Natarajan Ross?
Seen him before. We know him from the IPL. He's impressed before. He's a good player for India.
Max?
Yeah, especially with that left arm option, I think he'll be really useful.
I actually take a different view on that. I think he might. I don't know. Some skills just don't translate that well across, and I think his particular skill set might not. But we'll see.
I just like the approach. It's something a little bit different, right? I like the fact that his stock ball is a Yorker, and I just think that is different to what is pretty much taught now. And I think that is a good skill set to have in limited overs cricket.
Yeah, so that's what I don't think translates that well into international games. I think it might work if you can nail it in ODIs in the IPL. Sorry, it might work, particularly at the death when you're sometimes not bowling to top batsmen. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't really see much that was particularly scary from an international point of view. Livingston, we'll reverse the order. Max.
Yeah, I was impressed by Livingston. I think he came in and, like I said, looks like he is good enough to be part of that team and do a job at times.
Ross?
I think he's a really handy player, actually. I like the confidence that he kind of came out with. And I think, actually, England should probably have a look to include him in a T20 side, because I think the fact that he can bowl and the fact that he comes out and looks to score from the off, great asset.
And then the last couple of English players, David Malan. Obviously, we've seen a bit of him in T20s. Max, what do you think of his ODI chances?
I don't think he'll play. There seems to be basically he's behind Root, isn't he? And he's not going to be better than Root at what Root does.
So we've gone from a word to about 20 words now. David Malan, Ross.
All right.
Yeah, and Topley, Max.
Yeah, if he can keep himself fit, then good player to have around.
And Topley, Ross.
Again, all right. Didn't tell them what I like.
Right, Twitter. We'll just run through a few of these. Basically, loads of people messaged us, tweeted at us to say that we were wrong about Sam Curran, and he's actually amazing based on his performance. And they've picked.
When you say
moment.
we, it's the royal we, isn't it?
No, I think we have. Apart from you, maybe blindly because you're a Surrey fan, we have all doubted Sam Curran's top level ability.
I'm with the Twitterati.
Yeah, and how many of those Twitter accounts are actually from his brothers Ben and Tom? That's the big question.
So what I've said about Curran, and I think this holds true, is that he's very rarely the worst player for whatever conditions you're playing in, but he's very rarely the best. And so he's like kind of good to have about because he'll usually not let you down too badly. And sometimes he'll do what he did today, but he didn't win the game, did he?
If that was David Willey, eh, Jack?
Well, yeah. So Sandy asks, did the singles cost England the match? Max, what do you reckon?
No, I don't think so, because the counterfactual is that Woods on strike and eats up 3 dot balls. So I think Curran keeping the control there was the right thing to do, and it's very difficult to say otherwise.
Gautam asks, so now that this phenomenal white ball series is over, do you guys think that India benefited more? England seem to have forced India to alter their archaic tactics. England don't have the depth, but have relied on the strategic edge. Will India working out or cottoning onto that worry England, Ross?
I don't think it's a case of worrying England. I just think it's good for cricket. I think it's far more entertaining watching teams go ballistic, and regardless if you think that going at 4 and over is the right way to play ODI cricket, I think why do that when you go at 7.5, 8 and over? So I think England, like you said on the last one, Jack, around the great teams get emulated and their approaches get emulated. It's been a great learning curve for India, and I think we're going to be in for some really good cricket over the next couple of years.
And this one's directed at you as well, Ross. Vignesh Nair, who said ODIs aren't exciting?
Yeah, well, that's the bit, right? I think at the end of a tour, I was kind of in that position of why is there more ODI cricket when, especially as that. But yeah, they were a great spectacle, and it's nice to be surprised.
So Marsco 101, he usually asks a question, so this hopefully will be a good one. A lot has been made of India's ODI approach after the second ODI, but I feel England's depth is more important. Their top order hitting ability is why they can pursue this approach more successfully. Surely this is where they have the edge over the other teams. I actually don't think that's necessarily true, and I think we saw that today, that England's second-ranked players, or if you make Stokes be that number 3, I know he was amazing in the second ODI, but he had a second go. I think England are maybe slightly shallower. They just have this golden generation of first-team batters that are phenomenal.
Yeah, there's also, but if you look at India's, like Shreyas Iyer fell out the side because his shoulder fell out, and Pant came in, and Pant wasn't even playing in the first ODI, right? So
Should have
Pant
been,
Sky is a good player. Kishan's around the squad. India's T20 skills, I think they'll soon start to filter in to that ODI side. But when you've got one of the best ODI players of all time in Rohit Sharma, KL Rahul hit a century in this series. Shikhar Dhawan has looked in brilliant form, and it's a great sign for Delhi Capitals moving forward. I think that it's not a problem for India. They're kind of batting, and I think the new approach will probably benefit them even further.
Right, we've got like 2 or 3 questions left, so be quick on these. Atava, Joss Butler as captain. Max, you can rank him here. Did you enjoy it?
I think he did okay. I'd give him like a really bland 7.
Oh, I think he was worse than that, but not. I think he was just very average. I didn't think it was that exciting. If that's the England future, he's not as dynamic as Morgan, even if tactically we sometimes debate whether Morgan's as much of a genius as people say he is. And then Adam, is Pant the best player in the world at the moment, Ross?
Yes, I love Rishabh Pant.
The best player in the world. That's important. Right, so we'll last question. This one's coming from Abhishek. Who's the biggest gainer after the T20 and ODI series? So is it are India in the driving seat for the next 2 or 3 years in ODI cricket, or will England have learnt enough to overtake them again in that arms race? Max?
I think it's I'm going to say actually that India have, because it looks like they've maybe it's a bit early to say so, but based on a couple of games, but maybe they have actually thought we can match England in the way they play this game and smack it everywhere from the start and carry on doing it. And if that is the case, then I would say India are definitely the biggest gainers.
Ross?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that, Max. And I think they're only going to get stronger, right? They've got one of the best competitions in the world in the IPL, where more and more great players are kind of coming through. They're cutting their teeth as well at a really high level. And I think that can only benefit India. And I think throughout this tour, some of England's players are actually coming towards the end of their tenure. I'd be like, is Morgan actually going to captain and be an England player past the World Cup in October? Not entirely sure. And so there is going to be those transition periods. And I'm just not sure, as you said, Jack, around is Sam Billings going to come in and replace someone like Morgan? Is Liam Livingstone going to do that? It remains to be seen.
Yeah, I think what we've probably learned is that England are still slightly braver, strategically speaking and tactically speaking. And I think when the pressure's on a little bit, India sometimes can revert. But what we've also learned is that the talent depth in India is far deeper than England's.
Mm-hmm.
So England probably
Who'd have thought, with a population of 1 billion.
Yeah. England have to have their best 11 to have a chance of beating India. And even when that happens, because just there are so many talented players packed into a team, you're only ever like one Rishabh Pant day out away from the best made plans being blown up. So I think that's what we've learned. I think India will be happier. I think, like you both said, they've progressed towards a better brand of cricket over the 8 matches. And fair play for them to learning so quickly. Let's wrap up the show now. Like I said, 31st of March, be back on our channel, hit the bell. It'll go up about 6 or 7 in the morning, UK time, which will be, I don't know, a different time in India. I think it's about 8, 9, 10.
Somewhere, 11. I mean, you've named a spread of about 5 hours there, so you should be right.
Morning. It's the morning, I think. And that'll be our first IPL preview. The Rajasthan Royals, the best team ever in the IPL. I can't wait to talk about them. And I bet you boys can't either. I'm going to say goodbye. Cheerio.
Yeah, thank you for listening, Chris Silverwood and Ravi Shastri. You're welcome.
Imagine.